Okay, welcome to my first studio army review. Today I'm going to showcase my orc concept, not just the orc army. I'm going to go through some specific uh, formations unit type reviews as I go into detail of my army. For today, I'm going to talk more about just the concept of the orcs that I'm playing and kind of how I got started. So the this call came about back in late 2011 when I actually got started in Warhammer 40k. I had been wargaming back since I was a teenager, and my youngest son was, and both of my sons were at the age where they're starting to get interested in it. So we kind of looked around at different things we could get involved in, visiting the game store and talking to some actually a couple teachers at school who were into it, and they kind of gravitated toward Warhammer 40k. So I was okay with it. Didn't know much about it. I knew the old Warhammer from way back in the late 80s, but never really knew about the 40k. So I did some research, found out which armies we kind of like. My sons kind of leaned toward the Space Marines, which kind of like the Halo Spartans, and I leaned toward the Tau, which were aesthetically really cool, and they were shooty, which is kind of the kind of style I like to play. But there's no cheap way to get some armies back then when we first started, so we went with the Assault on Black Reach box to get the whole shebang at once. So my son got these Space Marines, I got the Orks. It was actually a blessing in disguise because I have a very competitive streak, and this kind of refocused me in the game. Because there are two things the Orc army brought to me that really helped. One was the phenomenal possibilities when it came to kit bashing and model design and scratch building and you name it, just creativity. It would definitely not be a repetitive army to build, so that was thrilling. The second thing was the playstyle was completely unlike anything I preferred, and the concept and the background, the fluff of the Orcs is they didn't really care if they won or lost. It was if they fought, they won. If they died, it didn't matter anyway. So that really was a good antidote to my competitive streak because I was trying to learn the game and didn't want to get frustrated when things weren't going as well as they are. As you know, a lot of war games, especially at 40k, have kind of a long learning curve with all the different unit options and war gear options you can buy within each army. So the Orcs ended up being a very good fit for me to get me started. They aren't my primary army, but they're definitely one that I just absolutely love to get back into throughout the year. So I want to kind of go over the basic concept and kind of the if you will, the backstory, the fluff of what you see here. I wanted to build my army. I want to kind of give some focus. How do you build the Orc army? Because there's different clans, 6 different clans or so, and different paint schemes, and just a whole lot of things you could do. And I need to kind of narrow it down to give myself some focus. So it came with a concept based on the tribe that's kind of started out as a feral orc tribe that eventually they're kind of freebooters because they exhibit characteristics of several different clans. They focus on looting like the Death Skulls do. They use blue paint like they do as well. They have lots of DACA. They love shooty things. So it's like the Bad Moons. They do paint their vehicles red like the Evil Sons. And they hire themselves out as mercenaries. They'll use more cunning and strategy like the Blood Axes. So kind of a conglomeration there. So I kind of narrowed my concept to be more like freebooters. Now, the concept also I wanted to have heavy on the mech side because I love the vehicle kit bashing opportunities. So I had to have a reason to get those in there. So they rely on they have a lot of mechs and they have a lot of vehicles and cans and def dreads or whatever. Don't have any def dreads cans yet. There are a couple in the works, but right now I don't have them. I wanted to kind of focus more on the shooting kind of side. Again, I love shooty armies, but more not because that's the play style I want to use. It's more the fluff background. They're great at close combat. They go in, they wail on the opponent with their weapons, hand-to-hand weapons, but they love the loud bangs, and so they'll use guns, but the guns are actually part of a status symbol thing. Everybody has a slugga. The richer boys have shooters. The even richer ones end up with big shooters, and as you go up to eventually the biggest, baddest, the most richest, the most arrogant ones have snaz guns. So those are the flash gits. And that's kind of how I structured it. So it's pretty good that way. Now, they do use blue because they're very superstitious. You'll see some blue scattered throughout the army. I'll talk about that as I go through the individual unit reviews as I go through the next few videos. But the one thing that you want to see is any yellow vehicles, because yellow makes things go boom bigger, and they do not want their vehicles exploding big. So that's one thing I made as an early rule. I'll vary up the colors, but mostly it's focused on the reds. And there's a heavy reliance on transports, the battle wagons, the trucks. And the battle wagons are, often you'll see them as hard cased. Again, just that little bunker that they can shoot in, just carry boys forward, especially the shooty type boys, not so much the close combat ones, like the flash gits and the ludas. Get them up close, drop them off into a specific spot to protect them on their way in. So what I want to kind of do is walk through, here's the history of the Grim Mech tribe. So, the tribe has its origins on a backwater planet that had once been invaded by an Ork warband. Their ancestors had made a deal with a trader for some weapons and munitions. Since the trader was selling faulty and non-functional ammo, he decided that it was best to ensure the Orks went in the opposite direction he intended to go. During the transaction, he had mentioned how he encountered a wealthy race on a distant world who refused to buy his goods because, according to them, they had no reason to arm heavily, as no one knew of their planet. Sensing an opportunity for looting, and not catching the logic paradox in the trader's story, the Orks completed the transaction and then set course directly for this world of riches. Unfortunately, the information the warband had about the wealth and riches of the planet were quite wrong, as it was not inhabited by any sentient races. When the troops made landfall, they were surprised to find nothing to attack. Patrols were sent out in every direction, still believing that they simply missed the landing zone. The region of the landing zone was home to several vicious and deadly predators. These beasts stalked the patrols, and several patrols were attacked. Unfortunately for the beasts, the sheer number of Orks on patrol overwhelmed them, and the patrols enjoyed a fierce melee, ending with the death of the beasts. However, the mechs remaining back at the rock were fewer in number and supported by grots. As the mechs went about their job of setting up shop and preparing the war machines, they were easy prey to the sharp claws of the beasts that the patrols missed. Before they realized what was happening, half of the mechs were dead, and the big mech was pounced on. At the sight of the beast, the grots scattered, and the remaining mechs joined the big mech in an attempt to save him. As the beast lunged at the big mech, he was assailed by a fusillade of mega blasts and big shoot of fire. The beast died just as his jaws sliced the big mech in two. When the patrols returned, they reported their encounter with the beast and nothing else. The devastation back at the landing zone was a high price to pay for a mistake made by the navigator, whom they were sure got the directions wrong. If it wasn't for the fact that the navigator died in the attack, the returning knobs would have killed him. Instead, they had to settle for beating the navigator's lifeless body into a green pulp before boarding the rock in search of more promising targets. Well, after several months, the spores left by the dead mechs on the landing zone started a new tribe of Orks on the planet. These Orks built weapons quickly, and with access to wreckage from the initial beast attack on the landing zone, they were able to cobble together some very effective, sort of advanced, for feral Orks, weapons. Over the next several decades, the tribe grew stronger, as did their passion for technology. When Umis, Eldar, and other Ork tribes set foot on the planet, they were greeted with a brutal attack, given energy by their jealous rage that their visitors had better equipment than they did. With each victory, the stores of bits grew, giving the mechs a wealth of material from which to fashion very dangerous weapons. Then one day, the tribe saw the vessel that was transporting a team from the Imperial Exploratorium. A war boss had a plan. Instead of attacking the Umis on the ground, they would strike hard at the ship itself. They would board the vessel and take it over. If it tried to take off, they would shoot it down. If the plan worked, they would have their own fly-in ship. They would be able to go wherever they wanted. The plan went perfectly, or as perfectly as any Ork plan could, and just like every battle plan, it did not survive contact with the enemy. The landing party was taken completely by surprise, and the Orks stormed the ship in a frenzy. Unfortunately, given the high proportion of mechs in the boarding party, the attack lost steam as the mechs found a vast array of buttons and levers they could play with. The result was that the ship's crew took longer to subdue than expected, which gave the mechs time to push a few of those buttons. As the skirmish continued, the landing gear raised, the force fields raised, a power cell jettisoned, and the main engines were engaged. The ship lurched forward, with the shields forcing it to erratically bounce along the terrain. With no one at the helm due to the fight, the Orks' maiden voyage came to an abrupt end at the base of a rocky outcropping along a large stream. The crash temporarily stopped the fight and killed or injured most of the surviving crew members. The Orks, though thrown about just as much as the Umis, quickly captured the crew and burst into a frenzy of looting. With their capture of their first space-capable craft, the mechs were introduced to new power sources, force fields, and spacefaring propulsion systems. It would not be long before they repaired the landing craft and built several more of their own spaceships. The new flight technology ushered in a new phase of planetary conquest. Several of the Nobs took their boys to other regions of the planet where they encountered indigenous technological races, including some that had provided proper scrap. In the interim, since they first landed, other sentient settlers had come in and set up camp, so this was their opportunity to get proper scrap from those alien races there. Now, these regional conquests that kept them busy for the next few decades, but as all good things must come to an end. This period saw the rise of several specialized mobs that were new to the tribe. A couple of Nob mobs, including Zagnosh's own bodyguard, contracted the mechs to build them suits of armor. The Mega Nobs were among the wealthiest in the tribe. A mob of boys conned several mechs to build them huge long-range guns and joined their mob as specialists. One group of especially eccentric Nobs got together and had especially fancy guns made to match their fancy, brightly colored clothing that they preferred to wear. No longer was this a feral tribe of Orks. They had become modern Orks, and their calling was to conquer. With the planet subdued, Zagnosh knew it would not be long before the Orks scattered across the planet, broke from the tribe, and began attacking each other. He liked the way things worked out in his tribe and was determined to preserve his supreme position. He also realized that knocking Ork heads repeatedly offered no chance for new loot. All he could hope for was accumulating more of the same loot. He decided to leave the planet with the core of his band and establish his tribe in space. He had a couple of ships on which his mobs could be packed, so he loaded up and launched. Completely cut off from the feral beginnings, and they changed their tribal name to the Grim Mech tribe to reflect their current nature, ruthlessly cunning. Fortunately, the charts captured with the exploration ship were deciphered and provided the location of several promising planets, as well as some juicy shipping lanes. Thus began the tribe's career of piracy and planetary raids. At last the tribe would have access to all the loot any self-respecting mech boy could ask for. Now, the exploits of the tribe did not go unnoticed. A few pirates and unscrupulous planetary governors noticed that the tribe was not conquering the planets it invaded. After looting the target, the site was abandoned. It seemed that the tribe's ultimate goal was the acquisition of loot. With that being the case, Zagnosh was approached by several envoys offering shiny trinkets in hopes that the Orks would give them enough time to hear their offer. A couple of times it actually worked, and Zagnosh was told of a very profitable arrangement that could be made if they would just join forces against a specific target. Sometimes they would even be on their own to attack a target, but in any case the tribe would have claim to all or at least a large portion of the spoils. Eventually, the tribe's reputation grew as Zagnosh entertained many offers from many races against many enemies. On one occasion in particular, a planetary governor on the fringe of the Imperium's borders hatched a plan to set his own planetary organization controlling the planet's production. He promised Zagnosh that he could have every piece of Imperial Guard military equipment on the planet if he would attack and wipe out the regiment assigned to the planet. Just as the last Guard units were overrun, the governor sent a falsified distress message that misled the Imperium that the entire system had been conquered in an Ork wall. The message was deliberately cut short to convince any recipients that the planet had been lost. This ruse seemed to work, and the relief forces never came. Unfortunately for the governor, he underestimated the power of the Ork's literal mind. When the war boss and his Nobs attempted to collect all of the Imperial equipment, even the PDFs, the governor went mad with anger and, in a feeble attempt to nullify the contract, ordered his guard to kill the war boss. The bloodstains from the governor and his guard can still be seen on the floor and walls of the governor's office. After loading his transports with all of the military equipment, as well as some of the other loot, the war boss and his band moved on to the next contract. So that is the backstory for my Ork mob, and I've got a lot of models yet to add in here. You'll see it in the subsequent videos to follow. I'll go through several of the force organization types. We'll go through the HQs, the troops, the elites, fast attack and heavy support, and you'll kind of see what I've chosen and why. So if you're interested in more of these for orcs, a little more backstory, anything, just comment below. Let me know what you think. Please give me any feedback, share, like, and subscribe. And I look forward to seeing you in the next Studio Army review, where we're going to cover the Ork HQ units. All right, thanks. Bye.